When Teacher Mabel first arrived in Ngwambé village, it was as if the wind carried her in. She came with no family, no husband, no child, only a leather trunk and a long black veil that seemed stitched from the shadows themselves. The villagers had waited months for a replacement teacher, and so when she offered her services, no one dared question where she had come from. The elders looked into her eyes and saw nothing, not kindness, not anger, just stillness, the type of stillness that makes even fire cool. The headmaster, eager to reopen the classroom, gave her the key without hesitation. She moved into the small quarters beside the school where teachers often stayed. But unlike her predecessors, Mabel never mingled in the village square. She never came to Sunday gatherings or joined in harvest dances. Children would pass by her window and say they never saw her sleep. Some claimed she stood motionless in front of the mirror at night, whispering to herself in a language no one could name. The only sound ever heard from her house was the low hum of a tune that felt familiar, hit older than time. When she first stepped into the classroom, the air shifted. Her voice, calm and slow, seemed to weigh heavier than it should. She spoke in proverbs, never raising her tone. Even the noisiest children, the ones known to pull braids and spit seeds during lessons, sat frozen, as if bewitched. She didn't write on the board often. She made them listen, memorize, recite. Words are spells, she'd say, and the tongue is a knife. But the strangest thing wasn't her silence. It was the mirror. On the very first day, she dragged in a tall, dust-covered mirror with an iron frame. It was old, ancient even, with symbols etched along the borders. She placed it directly behind her desk and told the class, "This is where you meet your truest self." No one dared ask where she got it. No one dared question what she meant. But from that day on, every lesson began and ended with a glance in the mirror. What puzzled the villagers most was how quickly the school changed under her control. Children began coming home quieter, obedient, but also distant. They stopped playing as much, stopped laughing, and if anyone ever asked about their teacher, they'd simply say, "She sees everything." At first, parents were impressed, but soon the silence became frightening, because when the eyes of a child no longer shine, when even the birds stop singing near the classroom, you know something is terribly wrong. At the beginning, Teacher Mabel seemed almost magical. She didn't shout, didn't beat, didn't carry a cane like other teachers before her. Instead, she had a way of making children sit still without saying a word. Just one look from her, and even the rowdiest boy would fall silent. Her lessons were not just about alphabets or numbers, but about order. "Well, there is beauty in silence," so she would say, her voice smooth like palm wine but cold like mountain water. Children, curious and eager, tried their best to impress her. And when they did, she would reward them with red toffees wrapped in silky paper or strokes of their names on the honour stone, a flat black slate she kept beside the mirror. Soon, pupils began competing not for knowledge, but for her favour. Those who sat quietly and obeyed earned her smile, brief, sharp, and strangely satisfying. Parents at first celebrated this change. "Our children are finally disciplined," they said. "She has brought peace to the classroom." But what the parents couldn't see was that the children's laughter had disappeared. Their playfulness faded. They no longer ran, shouted, or sang the songs they used to. They had become obedient, yes, but hollow. The turning point was the mirror seat. One day, a child dropped a pencil and laughed nervously. Mabel calmly pointed to the chair in front of the mirror and said, "Sit, look into yourself." Everyone went quiet. The boy sat there for 10 minutes, eyes fixed forward, the rest of the class still as stone. When he returned to his seat, he said nothing, but his face was pale, and he never laughed again. From then on, the mirror seat became her punishment. Always calm, always cold, but deeply feared. One by one, children were sent there, for giggling, for speaking without raising a hand, for daydreaming, and when they returned, something was always missing. Some couldn't remember their own names for a while. Others flinched at their reflections in glass. One girl reportedly stopped eating, whispering, "I don't want to feed the one inside." No one understood what she meant. But the mirror, it remained spotless, as if it fed on something unseen. Whispers began among the children. They said the mirror could pull a part of you away. The part that was loud, joyful, and wild. "If you stare too long," one child said, "you won't return all the way." But they never dared tell their parents. Why? Because no one believed anything bad could come from a woman so calm, so elegant, so controlled. And so the children suffered quietly, smiling in the daylight, screaming in silence. No one knew exactly where the mirror came from. It stood nearly 6 feet tall, framed with rusted iron vines that twisted around it like they were alive. Strange markings were carved along the border. Some said they were tribal, others said they were ancient spell symbols long forbidden. But Teacher Mabel never explained. She simply said, "It shows who you really are." The children, though unsettled, didn't dare ask more. But the mirror did more than reflect. It seemed aware. During the hottest afternoons, when the windows fogged and the walls pulsed with heat, the mirror stayed cool. Some children claimed that if you stared long enough, your reflection would blink even when you didn't. Others said they heard something, soft hissing, faint whispers in a language not spoken in any nearby land. The whispers grew louder at night. Those who lived near the school said they could hear singing drifting from the classroom. Not Teacher Mabel's voice, but many voices, layered, echoing like wind through hollow wood. One brave boy crept to the window and swore he saw faces moving in the mirror's surface. Not reflections, but people trapped behind the glass. When he spoke about it the next day, he was sent to the mirror seat. After that, he never spoke again. The children began to fear the mirror more than they feared the cane. They sat with their eyes lowered, afraid even to glance at it during lessons. Some tried to cover it with cloth, but Mabel would always arrive, uncover it calmly and say, "And never hide from yourself. It only makes the mirror hungrier." That sentence haunted them, because every time a child disappeared, the mirror grew cleaner, shinier, as if it had been fed. And yet none of this reached the parents. They only saw calm children and peaceful reports. But inside the classroom, the mirror loomed like a second teacher, and unlike Mabel, it never blinked. The first child who vanished was Kwetsi, the boy who always laughed at everything, even when it wasn't funny. His joy was loud, his teeth white as river stones, his voice brighter than morning birds. On the day he disappeared, he had interrupted class with a joke. The class giggled. Mabel did not. She pointed to the mirror seat. Kwesi, still smiling, took the chair. He looked at the mirror, and the laughter slowly faded from his face. His shoulders dropped, his fingers clenched, his eyes widened. Not in fear, but like he was recognizing something terrifying. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Mabel never looked at him, just kept reading aloud as if nothing was wrong. When she finally allowed him to return to his seat, he did not move. When the school bell rang, the children grabbed their bags. But Kwesi was gone. His chair sat empty. His books were there, his bag under the desk. His body, no one. The children whispered nervously among themselves, but no one dared say it aloud. That night, his parents searched the school grounds. The villagers joined in. The chief himself led a search into the forest. But there were no footprints, no torn clothes, no blood. Only a small handprint smeared across the mirror's surface, as if someone inside had tried to push out. The school closed for a week. Mabel said she was deeply saddened, but her eyes remained calm, too calm. She said Kwesi must have run away, perhaps overwhelmed by pressure. The headmaster agreed. The village didn't know what else to believe. After all, what parent wants to think their child vanished into a mirror? When school resumed, Kwesi's desk remained untouched. Mabel never mentioned his name again, but the children knew. They knew where he had gone. And worse, they knew the mirror was now hungry again. After Kwesi, the mirror became a silent threat, always watching. Children tiptoed through lessons. Even breathing felt too loud, but no matter how careful they were, some were still sent to sit before it. Some came back, changed. Others never returned. The pattern had begun. Mabel had rules no one could understand. Sometimes a child could whisper and be ignored. Other times a single glance out the window led to the mirror seat. It was as though the mirror chose, not her, like it called to certain children. She would place them there, and they would sit. Some crying, some shaking, some staring like statues, and the longer they stared, the more they seemed to fade. One boy came back with his voice completely gone. The healer said there was nothing wrong with his throat, no swelling, no pain. But he never spoke again. Another girl returned from the mirror smiling so wide, so unnatural, it unsettled her own mother. That same girl walked into the river 2 days later. She never came out. Each time, Mabel offered only calm condolences. The villagers grew uneasy, but they had no proof. How do you accuse a mirror of murder? How do you explain that your child's reflection stole their spirit? The fear grew quietly, like smoke from a slow fire. Even children stopped telling each other stories. They simply pointed at the mirror and shook their heads as if to say, "It chooses." And so the mirror took. Not just children, but joy, memory, and light. It swallowed them one by one. And Teacher Mabel, she remained untouched, unbothered, untouched by grief. She never aged, never cried, never laughed. She just taught. And the mirror fed. So the school was closed and the building burned as if fire could cleanse what had already stained the earth. The villagers tried to forget, to sing louder at festivals, to pray harder at sunrise, to speak only of crops and weddings. But no matter how many years passed, no matter how many new teachers came and went, no one ever rebuilt a classroom on that land again. And the mirror. Some say it shattered when the last child disappeared. Others say it vanished along with Mabel, who to this day was never found. But in the homes where children still whisper the tale, mirrors are covered at night, and mothers warn their little ones, and never look too long, or she'll see you. Because sometimes when a child goes missing in another village far away, when they vanish without a trace, the old people of Ngwambé exchange knowing looks, and say quietly, "Is she still teaching somewhere?" So listen well, my brothers and sisters, in this life, not every teacher gives knowledge. Some take it, and not every mirror shows your face. Some show your fate.